Now, as you know, on this show we deal in the real world, real issues and how they should be dealt with in the real world. There is another world, of course, the digital world, the social media world, the bitter, twisted, feral left world of Twitter, from where, sadly, too many politicians and way too many journalists take their cue. On that, the federal government is proposing new laws now to try and impose real-world standards, real-world accountability on this digital world. It'll make these multi-billion-dollar social media and digital companies responsible as publishers for what goes up on their platforms, just as we on this station can be responsible not only for what we say on our programs, but for what our guests say too. The proposed laws will also force these companies, these digital giants, to reveal the identities of some anonymous users in some cases where perhaps someone's been defamed or threatened or the like. Now, this is a fraught area for legislation, but a very important one. And just as this Morrison Coalition government has led the world in getting the digital giants to actually pay for the journalistic content that they profit from, they're now going to attempt to lead the world in this difficult area of controlling online trolls and protecting people, especially women who receive the most vile, sexualised abuse, and children, of course, who are bullied when they are most vulnerable.
Of the top 5 negative experiences in a recent survey, Mr Speaker, of Australian teenagers, they listed a negative online experience. 30%, Mr Speaker, of women disproportionately targeted for abuse online. I know as a parent, I know, Mr Speaker, as a Member of Parliament and as a Prime Minister, Mr Speaker, that this is an issue that is discussed in homes and clubs and communities all around the country. Social media is tearing at the very fabric of our society, Mr Speaker, and we need to protect our kids.
Now, implementing these laws won't be easy. A committee is going to examine the issues and help shape the draft legislation, but the outcome could be very worthwhile. As you know, I've highlighted the abuse and lies carried on Twitter and elsewhere for a long while, showing plenty of it to you on this program and writing about it in The Australian. So despite how complex this might be, you don't want to impinge on freedom of speech and freedom of expression, for instance, but difficult as it is, it's a good thing the government, the entire parliament, is going to have a crack at doing this. And just on that, it's timely to look at an example of the digital world, the hypocritical green left world of social media. This is a fairly gentle example of the last 24 hours. Nothing too abusive, just laying bare the double standards that are so typical. Especially after the report yesterday into bullying and sexual harassment in Parliament, there was understandable dismay about the behaviour of some of our politicians in question time. There was this exchange that we showed you last night.
Well, hang on. Sit down.
I'm still hearing.
You sit down, BOOFHEAD. You sit down.
I've got the
call.
Of the House
I've got the call. Sit down.
Is leave granted?
You don't grant leave to stunts, Mr Speaker. And I'll tell you what, you could speak here all day, you wouldn't convince the Australian public you're strong.
Sit down, BOOFHEAD, says the alternative Prime Minister. And in the Senate, Liberal Senator David Van was forced to apologise for apparently growling like a dog while Jackie Lambie was speaking. The video didn't actually pick up exactly what sort of noise he made, but the lefties on Twitter were quick to express their disgust, of course. ABC favourite, Guardian columnist and Journos Union official Van Badham rightly pointed out that this senator ought to be ashamed to only ever make headlines for doing something as petty, pathetic and gross as this episode. Fair enough. Plenty of others piled on too. But what did they have to say about ALBO'S BOOFHEAD intervention? That was different. The Sydney Morning Herald's Peter Fitzsimmons said the growling at Lambie was appalling, but that Albanese's BOOFHEAD jibe was refreshing. And when some artist came up with a T-shirt promoting the sit-down BOOFHEAD line, indeed a full range of sit-down BOOFHEAD merchandise, revelling in this parliamentary attack on Peter Dutton, well then Van Badham, the same Van Badham, so appalled by growling, she retweeted the T-shirt and promoted sales of sit-down BOOFHEAD gear. And with this abuse then turning into a Twitter hashtag, wouldn't you know it, Labor advertising flack Dee Madigan tweeted about this being her favourite hashtag. So that's Labor encouraging and endorsing abuse of the coalition. Boofheads and growling senators. Not the most severe of abuse, as I said, but again, just showing how twisted the social media world is, how it rails against abuse or criticism of one side of politics and piles on consistently against anyone right of centre. Coalition women like Nicole Flint know all too well about this double standard. She's been hounded out of politics by abuse and intimidation, most of it online, while left-of-centre politicians and journalists, not to mention the Twitter ferals, well, they either cheered it on or they stood by in silence.